How's it going, everybody? It's Young here with a Death Stranding discussion video. Today I want to talk about what Kojima needs to learn from Metal Gear Solid 5 to make Death Stranding a success. Despite critical acclaim, Phantom Pain was a polarizing game among Metal Gear fans for a variety of reasons, so here is what Kojima Productions needs to do to avoid a similar outcome. Now, we don't know much about gameplay, so it's hard to say what Death Stranding can learn from Metal Gear Solid 5 in that respect. But if there's one thing that most people will agree on is that even if MGS5's story was disappointing, the gameplay was stellar, so I'm actually not too worried on that front. We do know that Death Stranding will be an action game and that people who play AAA games like The Division and Uncharted will feel right at home, according to Kojima. So the most I can say right now is that the game needs to be polished, controlled tightly, be fun, and be decently packed with dense content. But these are all things that Kojima never had much trouble with, so I'm not too worried about gameplay. I guess one thing that I will say is that if Death Stranding features boss battles, I hope Kojima will make each one more unique and compelling than what we saw in Phantom Pain. While I still love the battles against the terrifying skulls, especially the metallic Archaea mission, the game did rely on them far too heavily. Not to say that the skulls were the only bosses, but even some of the more unique ones weren't as memorable as bosses from past games. I did like Quiet's battle, but Eli's was meh, the female skulls were badass, but it was basically like fighting four Quiets. The Man on Fire's battle was less of a battle and more of an escape sequence, and we never got a face-off against Skullface, which was a massive disappointment. The battle against Sahelanthropus was incredible though. But my point is, if Kojima intends to feature boss battles in Death Stranding, I hope he makes each one of them really unique and compelling, but overall not too concerned with gameplay being an issue. What I am more worried about are some of the overarching aspects of the game. One of the biggest problems I had with MGS5 is that Kojima showed way too much before its two parts launched. For Ground Zeroes, Kojima had showed the entire beginning cutscene and most of the end cutscene prior to the game's launch, so it didn't have as much impact as it could have. And for Phantom Pain, we were shown glimpses of every major Phantom Pain cutscene through numerous trailers leading up to the game's launch, so fans had little to be surprised about when they got their hands on the game. Kojima's excuse for this was that because the scenes were shown out of order, people would have no context for what they're seeing, so the game would still be surprising. While that's true on some level, I think a lot of the game's spectacle was lost, and there was also enough footage shown for people to be able to piece together some of the big moments. I think sequences like the hospital scene, missions like shining lights even in death, and epic moments like Sahelanthropus wrecking shit would have been a hell lot more impactful and incredible had any of their footage been completely left out from the trailers. I know this because I was fortunate enough to have been invited to Phantom Pain's review event, where I got to play almost 40 hours of Phantom Pain prior to the game's release, and this happened before Konami released the launch trailer spoiling Sahelanthropus' ability to walk upright along with its metallic Archaea whip sword thingy, and I remember being utterly blown away by that moment because it was something that came to me as a complete surprise. It's unfortunate that many people probably didn't get to experience that same awe because the launch trailer showed too much, and the same with all other trailers. Not to say that there weren't any surprises in Phantom Pain, but there was enough spoiled that the effect of the game's many awesome moments was diminished. A lot of that wow factor was just gone. I think Kojima relied too much on the big boss plot twist to carry the whole game, which is perhaps why he didn't mind showing off so much of the game's individual moments and spectacle, but I think it was overall to Metal Gear Solid 5's detriment. So with Death Stranding, I truly hope that Kojima considers revealing as little as possible. I wouldn't mind a basic synopsis and some gameplay showcase, but if story and spectacle are going to play a big part in this game, which I'm sure will be the case because this is Kojima we're talking about, maybe the best thing he can do is to save it for when the game launches. I guess a more simple way to put it would be that he should do more spoiler-free gameplay trailers or showcase and less cinematic trailers. Another big problem that MGS5 had was its story, and I'm not necessarily talking about the game's ending. That's a whole elephant within itself. I'm referring more to the story's pacing, which was almost universally shunned by fans. The first chapter of the game moves along quite nicely, with story developing at a constant pace, but once that second chapter hits, the story slows down to a crawl and has players checking off mandatory rehashed missions along with repetitive side-ops to unlock story segments, and this structure lingers all the way to the end. And as far as the ending goes, I personally did not hate it like many people did, but I will say that the way the ending unlocked was anticlimactic, to say the least. Hell, the fact that you have to unlock it rather than developing naturally is a problem, and when it does finally unlock, you're forced to replay a slightly altered version of the hospital mission from the beginning of the game. A climactic build-up and an epic final mission would have gone a long way in selling the final twist. So with Death Stranding, Kojima needs to keep a constant pacing from beginning to end on both the gameplay and story front, and he can't pull stunts like making rehashed missions mandatory to extend the game's length. That's not to say that MGS5 didn't have plenty of great gameplay moments, it's just that the way it was structured made it so that the second half of the game lacked the momentum that it needed to deliver such a big plot twist effectively. So here's hoping that Kojima avoids the same mistake with his latest project. But perhaps an even bigger sin is the fact that Phantom Pain clearly left out some story elements. Episode 51 in particular comes to mind, Kingdom of the Flies, which was supposed to resolve the conflict with Eli after he stole Sahelanthropus. But instead of being included with the game, the episode was showcased through a video that was pieced together from incomplete assets that was included in the collector's edition's behind-the-scenes Blu-ray disc. They couldn't even make the video available for everyone from the get-go. It was frankly a little insulting. Fortunately, we have this thing called the internet, and someone was kind enough to upload the video to YouTube, but regardless, it certainly left a bitter taste in many people's mouths. And this wasn't even the only sign of cut content. People have found files indicating that there might have been intentions to make a Chapter 3 called Peace, although I don't have an opinion on the matter because we really don't know what this Chapter 3 really is. And there are also little things here and there that's missing, like gameplay mechanics related to the battle gear, which the game makes a big deal about only to serve very little purpose after its completion. But anyway, my point is that Death Stranding cannot repeat this mistake of leaving out content. I personally still love MGS5, and it's still some of the most fun I've had with a game in a very long time, but I can definitely understand how it might have left fans bitter. I will say this though, based on some insider information that I have that I can't discuss, I can tell you that the debacle between Kojima and Konami had a large influence on why the game turned out the way it did. But now that Kojima has gone indie and has a partner, Sony, that has expressed nothing short of trust and support, I think this will no longer be a problem. Keep in mind that MGS5 was a victim of a troubled development environment, but that's not the case with Death Stranding. As a result, I think we will see Kojima take as much time as he needs to deliver the product that he wants. One final thing for Kojima to learn from MGS5 is to not make false promises. While there were plenty of hints regarding the true nature of Big Boss and Phantom Pain, Kojima also straight up said on many occasions that Metal Gear Solid 5 will be Big Boss's revenge story and that it would show how he became a villain. While there are some half-truths in there if you think about it, those comments also gave Metal Gear fans some very specific ideas and expectations. We were expecting an epic story leading up to the creation of Outer Heaven from the real Big Boss's perspective, but we instead got something else entirely. I think that's a big reason for why people were so pissed at Phantom Pain. It's just not what they wanted. One thing would be if Kojima simply said that it would be a different kind of Metal Gear and left it at that, but he made very specific statements that brought about very specific expectations. And when the game steered in a completely different direction from what fans were expecting, that's when all the outcry began. So for Death Stranding, I think Kojima should be very careful about playing with fans' expectations. There's only so far you can take it before people lash out, so maybe it's for the best to go for something straightforward, but deep, with no trickery involved. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm completely cool with all the what the fuckery from Death Stranding's trailer. I mean, what the fuck is happening there? Who knows? But as long as the game doesn't stray too much from what it was originally advertised as, I think a lot of people will be fine with that. That's why people love MGS3 so much. At its core, the game's story was very simply about an up-and-coming soldier and his relationship with his legendary mentor, and the complications that came with their occupation as government tools and soldiers. It was just that from beginning to end, very simple but still quite deep and complex. Hopefully that's the route that Death Stranding will take in its narrative and overall structure. It doesn't need to be this huge conspiracy theory-inducing kind of story. Simple and deep can go hand in hand, and it can be freaking beautiful when done right. So, there you have it folks, my thoughts on what Kojima can learn from Metal Gear Solid 5 to make Death Stranding a success. Thank you for tuning in. I would love to hear your thoughts on the matter in the comments below, and to be further updated on gaming news, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah! I'll see you guys next time. Yeong out!